would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again? What would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again?
All truth passes through these phases, ridiculed and opposed with hatred, and then lastly accepted as self-evident when stated.
If you knew the secrets of the world again, what would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again? What would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again? What would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again?
I will do these things in this life that I want to do. I will have those things in this life that I want to have.
I will be the man in this life that I was born to be. What would you do? Make the decision to be me. Be the man, I'm gonna be the man, I'm gonna be the man, I'm gonna be the man. Make the decision to be me. What would you do if you knew the secrets of the world again?
Mr. Brad Baily, how's it going?
I'm okay. Today is better than yesterday. We're here in New York City during COVID, so essentially I'm taking it one day at a time. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for people that don't already know, my good friend Brad Baily, he is the most educated person that I know, having gone to Yale, Princeton, Berkeley, and Columbia. He has a number of accolades, including a Student Academy Award. So this is getting gold in the Student Oscars for a very pivotal and important documentary called Hail. And this is about how the whole curb cutting and getting people with disabilities rights again happened, and it's an amazing story. Brad has interviewed some of the biggest names in current history: Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Kobe Bryant, and he also travels more than anybody that I know, although I think that's slowed down now that there's the coronavirus. You happen to be in New York City and you have a lot of interesting perspective. I want to get to these things. But first, we're going to cue my intro as soon as I figure out how to do it.
My name is Dylan. This is my wife, Venta, and our partner in life and in love is our fiance, Mari. We've paved our own road, living on our own terms, and despite overcoming massive hurdles, now we're traveling the world making millions, designing and biohacking every single day to get the most out of life, and you can too. We are the Modern Prophets, and we welcome you to the Modern Prophets Academy.
All right. Hey, Brad.
I think so. I like that.
You're looking good, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Dylan.
I know, right? Life is tough. Can't even speak. I know life has been a little bit rough out there, but you're always so positive, even given the challenging situations. And I love your background. So cool. I think first we should talk about COVID. How is it going out there? What's the story?
What's the story? It's been rough. It's been a rough time period. I think, as you said, I'm a positive person. I'm an optimistic person, and I've lived long enough. I've seen a couple things, so to speak. Whether it be death of loved ones, whether it be 9/11, whether it be different hurricanes. I was here for Hurricane Sandy. So I've seen things before, but this was different in a way. I think in many ways, the impact on me personally was worse than anything I think I've ever experienced, just because, you have so much death and so much suffering, and it's right out the window, and there's no there's nowhere you can go to escape it in a way. And one of the big things about me was that if you limit my travel or the ability to get somewhere, then you've limited me. And it hit me at the core in that regard. And so a lot of us live here in New York City with just small, tiny studio apartments or one-bedroom apartments, and they're nothing compared to what some of my friends have in other places with yards and backyard pools and beaches and all those things to go to. And so some of the benefits or advantages of living in New York became a disadvantage in a way, because of the benefit of New York is that, you live in the middle of New York and that you have access to the whole world. The whole world is here. At any time of day, I can do anything. And that's one of the benefits of being here. And any time of day, I can go out and meet anybody I want to meet. And that's the great benefit of New York. During COVID, that becomes our liability, our density, the amount of people who's in our sort of daily, our space day to day becomes not only inconvenient, it becomes deadly. And and so a city that then sort of prides itself on not sleeping, all of those advantages became disadvantages in a way, in terms of being not only being able to catch the virus, but also once you caught it, your fear and being treated properly because of just the potential overflow of medical facilities, the potential overflow of hospitals, and the fact that even going into those spaces could be dangerous. Like I had 2 personal health scares this past month where I had to go to the emergency room, and for both of where I couldn't breathe in both of those 2 instances. And in both of those instances, there was the fear, even from the nurses. They're like, well, the longer you're here, you could catch COVID the longer you stay here. So I had to weigh that. But I'm like, if I'm not breathing, I'm not breathing. So I need to be here. So thankfully, I was taken care of, and and I was able to leave. And I've had about 3 COVID tests so far, and all of them have turned out negative. Even though myself, I still feel like I don't know how reliable those are, because you still have symptoms that still feel that way sometimes.
Is that relieving, or do you wish you already had it so that you had hopefully the immunity to it?
Well, it's a little bit of both, because you sort of ask yourself, how is it possible that I've been here for a month and not have had it yet? I don't even think that's possible, and I've quarantined a lot. I quarantine religiously. My social distancing is extreme. And I go outside and I see people with half masks on, and I see people with, no mask on, or just hanging out in the street. Like I almost got into like a scuffle on the street with this guy. He was with a group of guys, and they were like, why do you have a mask on? I'm like, none of your business. And they're like, well, what if we came and took your mask off? And I'm like, well, if you do that, you'll regret that. And I think they kept their distance because I think they knew I was sort of serious. But like that was in the early part of the epidemic. I don't know where those guys are. I haven't seen them on the street, so I don't know.
For people that can't see the perspective on Brad, I mean, you're like a football, basketball player. So you're way taller than I am. I'm 6 foot. And so it would be a ballsy person to try to pick a fight with you.
Yeah, and I was
or a group of people. It'd have to be a group of people. So that kind of makes sense, I guess.
Even with a group, I was in a frame of mind that day of just like, if you come anywhere near me, it's going to be a problem. And I just, because again, it was just there was a lot of tension in the city, and I think you feel it. It manifests in your body. The stress manifests in your body. Like, I've been surprisingly able to get to the age I'm at without dealing with anxiety my whole life. And I think for the first time in my whole life, I've had to deal with anxiety just of, how do you cope? How do you mentally cope when there's death every single day out your window? And then I think I've had friends all over the country which sort of perplexes me, because they haven't been as intense in the situation as I have. And so they look at the situation, some people are calling it hoaxes and all these other things. I'm like, no, this is real. This is death. This is tragic. And there's nothing good about this. There's nothing false about this. This is all real. And so that it's given me a big perspective on not just myself, but also people who I had respected before in a lot of ways. But now I look at them a little differently, because I see how they behave when the pressure comes on, and I see how unaware they are of their own privileges. And I think that's important for a person to acknowledge.
Yeah, empathy is it really is a tough thing, I think, for people to have, and myself too. It's tough to put myself in someone else's shoes, and I can't even really guess how terrible it must be sometimes, having your neighbor being dead in her apartment. Yeah. You were telling me about that, and it's sad. I'm really sorry for the losses that you've had. But there's been maybe some silver linings, right? I mean, I heard you talk about, the 7:00 cheer, right?
Yeah. No, yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And I was talking to my friend Monica Prophet just the other day, and she was mentioning it. But what is that again?
We New Yorkers. I'm from Georgia, but I do consider myself. I consider myself a Georgian and a New Yorker, and a Californian, actually, in all three weird ways, because I've lived in all three places, and I do identify with all three places in very strong ways. So, but as a current New Yorker, there's something very special about the city, and there's something very proud I am about the city, and its ability to handle literally anything that's thrown at it. And what New York has done, and it's even, listening to Cuomo has sort of brought me to tears, I will admit, in instances, especially when he talks about the strength of New Yorkers and how this city, pretty much above anywhere, rises to the challenge that it's faced with. And so this particular challenge that we've been faced with, I love hearing my neighbors sort of just out their window every day at 7:00. Every day at 7:00, all of New York opens its windows and screams and yells or hits pots and pans just to show our appreciation for first responders, for EMS, for police, for nurses, for all those people who have literally kept us and me personally alive. Like, I'm putting my own life in the hands of people like Governor Cuomo, the grocery store workers, the pharmacists. They report it because they haven't failed us. I've not been failed by these people. And I find that so heartening. And so it makes me look at them and makes me look at my situation in just such a different way. How, when it came to it, when my life was on the line, when, the lives of our neighbors were on the line, these people did not fail us. And that's a huge, huge thing. I'll never forget it. I really won't. And I think New York City too has risen to that challenge. So I love the city even more than ever. So
cool. Well, right on. I'm glad you're safe.
Thank you.
And, I wanted to share I've got a life hack. I've got a coronavirus life hack that I wanted to share. I want to see if you think it's a good idea or not. Okay. So basically, let's just say you want to go get a soda, right?
Okay.
And you're wearing a rubber glove, but you want to be able to touch the soda, and you want to be able to take your rubber glove off. What you do is my green screen is getting away, but what you do is you just take the glove off your hand and roll it right up the soda, and then you can just hold on to the soda.
I don't touch, when I put my mask on in this city, I don't drink anything. I don't touch anything. Even when I get coffee, and I have been finally able to go get coffee, I stopped getting coffee.
The top of it. I Lysol the top of it.
Oh, God, it's gross. It's gross. Yeah, I
wiped it off, and then I unrolled the glove. Is this a good life hack or a bad life hack? I'm
never that thirsty. I'm just never that thirsty. I'm like, I can wait till I get home. I can wait, or I just don't need to drink anything. So unfortunately, it's a good life hack. I think it's a good life hack, but I just personally wouldn't use it. But it's good. It's good. So I think it works in Vegas, but I don't know if it works in New York. So I see people like with their, like they take their mask, they put it down, they do a smoke or they eat pizza and they drink something. I'm just like, idiots. I'm like, no, nothing's that serious. Even when I literally just got coffee, I don't touch the coffee top. I bring the coffee home and I actually reheat it versus drinking it from the cup that I just bought it from. I'm that serious. So I don't play games. So
for people with OCD, this is like, I don't know if it's like OCD heaven or if it's like terrorizing them.
Well, I've never considered myself OCD in a way, but now I've become that way. Yeah, I think it probably terrorized them because the corona paranoia is intense, especially here in New York, where almost 1 out of every 10 people is projected to have it. So when you walk out your door, you're pretty much assuming you bumped into something with COVID-19. So you just, I take a little alcohol spray and I spray the elevator buttons in my building. I spray door handles. I spray everything. There's nothing I don't touch unless it's been sprayed. So even at the drugstore or with the grocery store, I sanitize the buttons and then I touch them and then I re-sanitize my hand right after. It's nuts. I can't wait till this is over.
So for me, and I hope that every time I'm in the face of death, that I choose the path that I'm trying to. But the mantra that I have is to live every day as if it's my last, and to plan to live like I'm going to live forever, right? So my mantra, as you know, is to make today the best day of my life. And I hope if I'm surrounded with as much, mayhem and death as you are, that it allows me to kind of focus on trying to appreciate the moment that I do have. And I'm wondering, is there any of that perspective for you, or is it just terrifying, or is there also thank God for what I do have now? Where are you at with it? And it's okay either way. I mean, I could imagine myself that if I did get faced with it, that maybe I would just be all, not able to stick to my mantra. But I say it to myself every single day, so that hopefully when I'm on my deathbed, or when I'm in that situation, that I can choose to make that moment count.
Well, I mean, I think in this situation, it's survival. I think when you're faced in situations where you're at your last moments, then maybe I think my perspective would change in that regard. But I think in these moments, it's about survival at all costs, at every step. And I think, and I think your brain. I realized I did some research recently, and it's funny because I think your brain takes over. Because its only goal, it's keeping you alive. And it does that even when you don't realize it's doing that. And I think my brain did that. So it looked for any and all possibilities to keep me alive and to avoid not only catching this disease, but if I did catch it, to make sure that it did not get to the point where, I could die. And so that's where all my mental energy went, in terms of keeping that. I think, the things that I am a religious person in a lot of ways. People, I think, underestimate that about me. I'm a very spiritual person. And so all of the things that have kept me moving for these past few decades I've been alive have come rushing back to my aid. And there was one particular Friday, which I thought was interesting because I was at my worst, really, in terms of just the ability to cope. And and I'll never forget it. On this particular Friday, there were three things, and I can't really state what they were, three things that I needed. I'm not going to state what they were, but they were three particular things that I needed, because I sort of felt I was into my rope, and I was like, all right, if these things don't appear like they need to appear, I'm going to be in trouble. And what's so weird and strange and beautiful is that on one particular Friday, all three things appeared. And they relate to lots of different, keeping my health and all those things sort of together. All those three things appeared in one day. And on that evening, I knew I'd be okay. We were still sort of in the middle of a lot of the rough stuff going on. But I think on that day, all three of those things came out of nowhere, out of the blue. And so I knew whatever guardian angels or larger forces were at work. I knew they were at work that day looking out for me. So yeah, that's what happened.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that you're having spiritual revelations.
Absolutely. And also about the friends who have really stepped in, friends like yourself, friends like other people who have stepped in from all over the world to check on me, even more so than my family, some of my family members. And again, these are things I will not forget. I'm starting to even change my relationships to people based off how they've been behaving this past month or so. And I'm glad for it. So
prioritization.
Absolutely.
So I want to move the conversation and find out what you're working on next. What's
Sure.
Are you staying busy? Is it all just hanging out in your apartment, not working? Or are you able to be working on your next film project?
Well, I'm a student. Well, I'm still a student, and so, doing an MFA, but at the moment, a master. Well, doing an MFA, but right now I'm working on finishing the post production for my next short documentary. The first short documentary I released was Hail. Even though I'd done many projects before then, I went to Syria and done Syria and Jordan, and done a project with the Jordanian Syrian border, and done a project with refugees. I was in Madagascar, where I'd done a short film project. I did another short film project about refugees up in Connecticut. And so I've done different film projects around the world. And so Hail was, of course, the film that was completed in 2017, which was a 20-minute short about Hale Zukas, who was one of the founders of the disability movement, and who previously, until that moment, had sort of been overlooked in a lot of those disability movement conversations about early disability history. And so, thankfully, he has sort of regained his well-deserved status as one of the pioneers of that movement. The next project I'm working on is with African-American mothers who have dealt with the death of their son or daughter due to either police or community violence. Mm-hmm. The sort of concept of the film is that these mothers belong to this exclusive club of mothers, this club of mothers that no one wants to really be a part of, and that the high price of membership for this club is the death of their loved one, and due to, again, police or community violence. And so we follow one of the most high-profile cases in we follow one of the higher profile cases in that regard, and to sort of really understand intimately what a mother goes through during the moment, right after, and years after, and what she has to do to cope and to overcome that grief, and to sort of step out of that sort of private role and into a public role, and to make sure that it doesn't happen again, and to find justice in the ways that she can try to find justice, and to be a role model for other mothers of any race, to realize that no American mother should have to put up with this in this day and age. So,
wow. So, can we share who the which high profile case that is? I know which one it is.
Not yet. I'll be more comfortable we can totally do another interview when the film is out, so I can really give some people some perspective on it. But I think right now it's definitely a case a lot of people have heard of, most people have heard of, and I think I've learned. So she is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I think her spirit, her passion, her drive, her resilience is something that I think is like superhuman almost. And, but there's a lot of humanity to her, and there's a lot of humanity to how she has overcome a lot of the challenges that have come her way. And she's, and so the film will look at that in an intimate way. And it's going to look at that. The film is also about memory and about trauma, but about memory and how she and other mothers, through their memory, sort of keep their sons alive. A major component of the film, we call it, is the vessel, is that mothers are the physical vessels of their children when they are being born, when they carry them when they're pregnant. And then once their children have passed away due to this violence, these mothers continue to be a vessel, the physical vessel for their child's message once their child is gone. And I think that's something that resonated with me, and hopefully resonates with other people when they see the film.
That's great. I can't wait to see it. This is a topic that's very close to me. I don't know if you remember, but I had a police brutality situation that occurred to me, and yes. I battled for, I think it was like 8 years against the police department. Yes. And it wasn't a good financial decision for me to battle them. It worked out all right for me, but I would say I'm net negative, but I won. I won, and I created a published case. I went almost all the way to the Supreme Court. I went to the 9th District Court federally in San Francisco, and we battled and we won. And the decision that was made ended up being that if a police officer is being hired by an event, if they're being hired by an event that they and they're wearing the police uniform, that they still have to act as a police officer. And if they don't, they can get sued civilly. They have personal liability if they're going to put that on. So basically, places can't hire cops and get them to cover up their dirty work. You know,
Good.
That's not legal anymore. And I feel good about it because this has helped to counteract the police state. It's helped to, you know, put people on notice, and it's been used as a published case in law. It's been used over and over again to help other people go after the cops that are disreputable. That being said, I also, on the other hand, have an enormous respect for cops and that very tough job at the same time. And so long as they're reputable. But there's definitely this thing about where if they did something wrong, they want to cover it up, and that's not okay. You know, nobody should be above the law.
No one.
You know, especially not the cops. They should definitely be the ones that if they're breaking the law, the ones that are supposed to enforce it, you got to come down on them. And we just don't do it in the U.S. and it's messed up.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously police officers are there to protect us, and, they're there to, make sure harm does not come to us. But at the same time, we have to understand that legacies of racism and homophobia and sexism and all those things are still, unfortunately, aspects of our culture. And they're, of course, going to be aspects of anybody hired in, a police force in a place where you can't really where those aspects will come into play with regard to how an officer conducts and uses the power that the community has given them. And I think, obviously I used to investigate cops here in New York for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I was an investigator for here in the city. And
you have a degree in
public policy.
Okay.
Right after that. But that was actually one of the reasons I got the degree in public policy, because I learned a lot of different things in that sort of job, and I have cop friends, I have many cop friends. I come from a cop, law enforcement family, actually. So because of that, I understand the high responsibility that a person has and the need for a person to uphold those values, that even more so than if they were a civilian. And that's why they must be held to a higher standard in that regard, because they're given tremendous power, and we really have to just, as much as possible, deal with those aspects of racism, and whether it be in sensitivity training or whatever. But I think they're deeper problems in our culture, and they're deeper problems, deeper issues, I think, that we need to discuss as Americans. We need to have those conversations people don't want to have, and I think that's important to do. So I'm glad you're doing the things you do.
Thank you. I was talking about this topic a little bit with in my conversation a few days ago with former Attorney General of Nevada, George Chanos, and he was saying one of the big issues is that when you have a disparity in the race of the officers in a specific area. So if it's a black community and you don't have black officers, you're setting up a situation that's really messed up, and you should have the demographics reflect the community.
Absolutely.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. I did an oral history a couple years ago with one of the first African American police officers who was sort of a housing police officer here in New York City. And he was, I think, one of the first African American housing.
What time frame are we talking about?
60s.
That's when he started?
When he started, yeah. So and a lot of those housing projects before that point weren't African American. They were Italian or some type of like New York ethnic, European ethnic sort of community. And so here he was as an African American police officer in a predominantly sort of Italian, housing project in the 60s. So he truly had those were sort of one of the first few days of like community, sort of policing in a way. And he had some really great stories. But today, obviously, that it must be a reflection of who the policing must be a reflection of the community. And obviously, I don't believe that it has to be that way entirely by race, but I think race has to be represented there in some regard. Or you have to have, because again, you could still have some people who were white who grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood, and those guys can easily understand some of the challenges that go into, policing those areas. But I do believe that the demographics must reflect the policing. So.
Yeah, but I have also another contrasting point to this, which is that I think that people in general don't know how to handle police either, and they can offset, whether they're white or black or, whatever race, they can offset the communication in a very negative way right off the bat with certain types of disrespect that they're either doing on purpose or they're doing by accident. And so if you're interested, I'd love to share with you something that I learned from my police officer friend.
Okay.
You want to hear? Okay, so check this out. And this will change your life in terms of getting tickets and avoiding them. Do you drive? I mean, being from New York City,
I can drive. Yes, I don't drive here, but I do drive. Yes,
I know some New Yorkers they've don't even have a driver's license or they've never driven. Because
we don't. There's no need to drive here.
You're everywhere, so of course you drive.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's what a police officer friend of mine handed me, this book, and he said you got to read this. It's written by a police officer, and it's called The Police Officer's Guide to Avoiding Speeding Tickets, and it runs you through the main priorities for a police officer, which they're constantly, rightly so, paranoid that they might get shot by somebody. So diffusing that from the get-go is very important. And so here's the protocol that you want to go through if you're getting pulled over by a police officer.
Okay.
So step one, you see that it's happening. You're getting pulled over. Okay, so slow down just a little bit, just so they know that you're not going to run. Okay, second of all, do not pull over in some place that's going to endanger the police officer or yourself. It's going to start pissing them off right away. So you put on your turn signal, you roll down your window, maybe like a little wave, just let them know that you are going to pull over, and then just wait till it's a safe place. So if there's a shoulder and you can really get off the road in a way that they're not going to get creamed from behind, then do that. I've seen people pulled over on the left-hand side of a freeway with no shoulder and endangering. Yeah. So pulling off on the next exit's fine too. I mean, they're not in a rush to get you over unless they get on the bullhorn and they say, pull over. So step two, roll down all the windows of the car. Turn on the lights. Okay? Make it so that when they come up, they can see in the car, that they're not worried that there's some big-ass shotgun in the back or something like that. Yeah. And just keep your hands where you can see them, where they can see them. Yeah. So I'll just put one hand on the side outside. I'll put the other on that wheel, and they come up, and I got my roof skylight open and all my windows. They can see in the car. I keep my car clean, and they just walk up, and they're like, okay, this guy's going to be cool, right? Yeah. I also then don't go and reach for my license or anything. I take my time, and I talk to them because I have this very brief moment, and this is all stuff that I learned in the book, of this very brief moment of time where I get to create some sort of a personal relationship with him. I say, oh, hey, how's your day going? Nice to see you, just be cool. And then if they say, license and registration, I just explain, okay, my driver's license is in my phone. That's in my pocket. And I got the registration is my glove compartment. Do you want me to grab those? And he'll be like, yeah. And then I just do it. So we're just having a conversation, but I'm not like doing any herky job. I'm not being nervous or freaking him out. And they appreciate that a lot. And then I just don't get tickets. And I have my concealed carry permit for Nevada. And so oftentimes I even have a gun on me, if I'm getting pulled over, I just let them know, by the way, we got a gun in my pocket. And I say it first, I have a CCW and I'm carrying right now. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Thank you for telling me. They just let me know that they're okay with that, And just that type of communication makes it so that most of the time they just let me off. And I haven't, ever since I read the book, knock on wood, I haven't gotten a ticket. But I have been pulled over.
What's that book again?
It's called The Speeder's Guide to Avoiding Tickets. And so I'll actually include if it's still a book that's for sale, let me check and I'll put a link right now.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think though that's crucial. I think all those things are important, but at the same time, I think that it just depends on the context, because I think, you're also like a white male. And I think that officers, and I think even with suggestions like that, I think they help in some cases, but I also think that in others, they could be more deadly especially for African American or Latino drivers in situations. But I think you're right. Those are situations to help a person in the best case scenario, to sort of bring down the threat matrix at whatever way you can do it, to make sure that you don't get killed and that you stay alive in a police encounter. And it's tough. It's tough because I do believe that some officers do treat people differently based on those statistics. But I also believe that you can that there are things in your power to do, again, like the things you just mentioned, to help yourself as much as possible. So.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that sometimes if there's a huge amount of apprehension and it turns into miscalibration and appears like disrespect, that can go the opposite direction. I've seen a situation where I was hanging out with a girl that I didn't know. I was with a group of people, and there was a girl, and she happened to be black, and we were jaywalking, and it was it was at the end of the light. I mean, I could go either way, but the cops wanted to talk to us, and I was just like, whatever, if you're, if you need to ticket me, then whatever. I'd rather, just take the ticket and go. And she was like, saying this is harassment, and she was the only one that was being this way out of our group. And I was just like, they're like not appreciating this. I was like, just
it's a perspective though. I mean, and that's the thing.
She starts to posture against them, which is, when you're talking about to somebody with authority, she's posturing against them, and they're saying, well, let me have your license, and she's saying, nope, not going to give it to you. And then they say, like, look, you have to comply with this or we're going to arrest you. And she wouldn't, she started to threaten them, saying that she's a paralegal and that, like, I know my rights. And then they're just like, okay, they arrested her, Yeah. And I tried to help her out. She ended up going to jail, and her car got towed because she left it in a place. I tried to communicate with her to see if I could help her with her car. And she was very,
so I mean, I'll explain that. I mean, because you have to understand, again, it's PTSD that's passed down. The experience for African Americans in this country are different. They're just completely different. So even in, I think we're under the delusion sometimes that these situations, not just those situations, but all the situations are somehow different. Obviously, it's not the 60s, but at the same time, day-to-day interactions are different. There absolutely are. And so I could sort of, even though I would have acted differently than she would have in that situation, I believe that I understand why she acted the way she did. And, it's just, we really have to have these conversations. And, it's one of those things where African-American mothers have to their son something called the talk. And the talk is what to do in those types of scenarios to decrease the threat level so that our lives are not put at risk. And I think in this situation, maybe she didn't sort of take in some of those parameters for what the talk is. She escalated it, but again, when you've dealt with so much PTSD from just constant oppression, it's deep in the psychological sort of makeup of people who come from historically marginalized groups. And it's really, really, really tough to not take that off or to not have that sort of manifest itself when you're dealing with high pressure situations.
Well, so I guess where I'm at on it is that since I've been a victim of it as well, where there was an actual police situation, is that there needs to be a bit of a measured approach on both sides. There needs to be training on both sides. I think people, I don't know if it's a middle school thing, that need to be trained, like how to not be disrespectful to a cop, so that they have to protect their authority, because they do need to be in a position of authority. I mean, that is their job. So, there's some sort of happy medium where we can let them have their authority, let them do their job, but also not take excessive, not let them take excessive authority. You know what I mean?
But but see, the difference is though, Dylan, you can look at also the difference in that scenario versus what we've been looking at recently with regard to, African Americans, not African Americans, but protesters who were protesting stay-at-home measures around the country, and how many of them white have sort of stepped up in the faces of the different police officers, and in the state capitol, some of them, or the steps of the state capitol, or whatever, and the response, and none of them really have been arrested. They were definitely not met with violence. And, so again, it goes to show again that if some of these protesters were African American or of color, how differently they would have been treated, like walking into the state capitol of Michigan with an assault rifle, wanting to get into the chamber of the local state chamber. Like I couldn't even conceive of a group of African American or Latino protesters trying to pull that off without direct violence. But the protesters that did that in Michigan, who weren't
crazy. I can't believe. It's definitely illegal to be in a government building with a firearm.
But they weren't touched. None of them were touched.
They went inside. They went inside
the Capitol. They were inside the Capitol with weapons. And I think they weren't allowed inside the state capitol in California. But you can. There's a I think a Now This clip of young white protesters sort of in the faces of these policemen, and they were very gently sort of dealt with. So again, we have to have. You're right. I believe that there must be measured approaches on each side, but we also must take into account the difference in treatment, in severity of treatment for actions that a young white girl could probably do, where a young black girl could not do that, and how differently they both may get treated, even if they respond the same way to a police officer. So, and I think that's important to sort of do. So
yeah, that's crazy.
And many of them were
wearing bulletproof vests.
And many of them were demanding to get inside the actual state
They're bringing
chamber.
assault rifles in there. I did not know that part of this story.
No.
I just saw them on the steps.
No, they were inside. I'm almost sure of that. Make sure of that before you publish this, but I almost am certain that they were inside the Capitol with weapons. So, in Michigan, with weapons.
So interesting perspective. All right. I think one more topic before we go.
Sure.
Well, I'm excited about you and I. We've talked a number of times about maybe doing something in the future on a film level. I've been. I remember at Berkeley, I met up with you there. And you and I, we've had a number of adventures, driving from California down to Arizona. I remember that trip. But meeting up with you in Berkeley and being on your radio show. So what? I know that there's been some intrigue about doing something on me and the girls, and I'm curious from a film perspective, from a filmmaker's perspective, what impact do you think that my story could have, or what would you like to talk about in that realm?
Well, I think that you, Marie and Vinza, have a wonderful, an unconventional relationship. And I think it would be great for people to see that, because I think a lot of people grow up with a script, so to speak, about what they're supposed to do for a job, what type of partner they should have, and how many kids they should have. And I think a lot of people follow that script, which is fine. But I think, we need to, and I think that's become, as society progresses, I think we've become aware that there are alternatives to those choices. And sometimes the fight for the alternatives to those choices become possible. And I think it's great that people sort of understand the nuances of your relationship and who you are. And I think for me, that's the most important thing. Obviously, I definitely don't want to deal with the legal aspects of that, because that, sort of takes us down another road that I don't know if I want to sort of explore right now. But I do, for me as a filmmaker, I like exploring what a person's thinking, who they are inside, and sort of communicating those aspects to the outside world. And I think that's the most important thing. So I think, definitely communicating who you guys are, what you think, how you operate, and how you love, so to speak, would be great for me to do. And just to show that on a larger level in a way. And then people can make up their own minds when they see it. But I think for me, the goal as a filmmaker is to realistically and accurately either amplify or assist in amplifying the voice of the person that I'm the subject of my films. And so I always believe in anyone I'm interviewing, they have their own agency, and they are in many ways the co-creator of that voice and that image that's put out there. That's very crucial for me. I try to speak for no one. And and that's very important for me because I wouldn't want anybody speaking for me. And I want that voice of anybody I speak to be their own authentic voice that's out there. So
that's cool. In your movie about Hale, I think the one thing that we haven't mentioned about him is that he has a serious medical condition. The reason why he gets overlooked or has been overlooked in the past a lot is that he has, cerebral palsy?
Cerebral palsy, yeah. He was born with cerebral palsy, yes.
So he doesn't have use of his arms and legs for the most part, and he has a helmet with a thing on it.
Pointer, yes.
With a pointer, and that's how he kind of makes, he can do something kind of similar to Stephen Hawking.
Similar, yes.
How he communicates,
yes.
but he's a genius. He's a genius.
Oh, absolutely,
and
absolutely.
He's not a dumb person. He's college educated, but even more than that, I mean, he figured out this movement, and
yes.
It gets underestimated every step of the way, and then he comes out and really carries a lot of weight and impact with what he's able to create. So that's really cool. And I remember hearing you talk about like really letting that person almost tell their story. It's like I remember watching the him on his wheelchair going through to get to his meeting, and how just all the stuff he's got to go through to just live one day that's kind of easy for you and I to do, to get from point A to B.
Absolutely.
So if we were to do something, or as a filmmaker, is that all interviews, or are we or what kind of on location kind of stuff would you imagine?
I mean, well, just where you are. I've learned one thing in my filmmaking, to not recreate anything and to show people exactly where they are. So, wherever that is, whether it be Puerto Rico, whether it be Las Vegas, whether it be California, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, to show that. And that's that, and let that speak for itself. So.
Well, that's cool, man. I hope we get to do a project together.
I do too.
Reputation, accolades, and phenomenalness. That would be really cool. I would like to be able to, where do I find Hale? Or what would you like for, and I'm getting a call. Let me decline that.
But no, I think Hale is available on Amazon Prime. So anybody can do it on Amazon Prime. And Hale, Hale. There's a Hale kind of this morning, but the Hale I did is a short documentary that's available on Amazon Prime. So.
Okay, so I'm grabbing the link. Found it. Okay, boom.
Thank you. Yeah, and I hope they enjoy it. I love hearing what people have to say, and I love listening to their opinions and their thoughts about it. We screened Hale all over the world, from India to it was supposed to screen in Mexico City to France to England. It's screened all over the world. So it's his message has been out there for a lot of people to digest, and I'm so happy about that. So.
Cool. So. Where should people find you if they want to reach out to you about film projects, stuff like that? Onto IMDb? Is that the best place?
Well, I'm on IMDb, but I'm also on Instagram. They can also hit me up for follow requests there, which is fine too. I think Instagram is my best way to go. But I'm on IMDb and I'm on Instagram. So my Instagram is BiCoastalBrad. BiCoastalBrad. That's my Instagram. So if they want to follow me, that's where they can do it.
Okay, cool. Right on. I got it here. Well, Brad, it's been really cool, man, talking to you. Thank you for your time. Stay healthy, brother.
Thank you.
And I love you.
Love you, Dylan. And yeah, tell Marie and Vince I said hello. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
All right, cool.
Bye-bye.
My name is Dylan. This is my wife Venta, and our partner in life and in love is our fiance Mari. We've paved our own road, living on our own terms, and despite overcoming massive hurdles, now we're traveling the world making millions, designing and biohacking every single day to get the most out of life, and you can too. We are the Modern Prophets, and we welcome you to the Modern Prophets Academy.